was executive producer of Movistar Plus, José Manuel, Lorenzo, executive producer, Eduard, Fernández, actor, Álvaro, Morte, actor, Alberto, Rodríguez, director and screenplay writer, Manuel, solo actor, Rafael, Cobos, screenplay writer, and Araújo, screenplay writer. So, okay, please take your seats and please raise your hands so that I can give you the floor. While you think about the first few questions, I'd like to ask Alberto and Rafa, and Fran, sorry, the idea of adapting Javier Cerca's book, what attracted you from the point of view of the cinematographic adaptation of the book for the big screen? Well, I'll start. The initiative came from José, Lorenzo, and Domingo Corral, who gave me the idea, the possibility of adapting the book. The truth is, as it was a period that we'd been in other films, I didn't really feel like going back to the transition, but I hadn't read Cerca's book, so therefore they gave me the book, said, read it and see what you think. And I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was a story of a series of events that were known but ordered in a very different way, and that turned it up into a new story. I thought it was a movement through the history of our country in the 20th century, and I thought this was very interesting. And then Rafael participated, and I'm sure he can. Oh, yes. Rafael and Fran. He was convinced, and he convinced me, and I convinced him. It was a chain, a domino effect of convincing each other. Fran, you want to add anything? Mine was easy because I would do anything what Rafa says, so I didn't cause any problems. Front row? Yes, congratulations. For the series, it seems necessary, and it's another part of this film, which is showing a lot of things about the recent history of Spain. What I need, Álvaro Morte, it was difficult to recognize Álvaro Fernández being Suarez, portraying Suarez in Carrera. That's the best thing you see about an actor, what's behind the character. So therefore, congratulations. It was difficult for me to come to the end, almost at the end, and know who you were and read your names in the credits. And Alberto Rodríguez, I would like to know whether you got in touch with Javier Cercas or not, or whether he has any opinion that he can reveal. No. Or these conversations of those conversations with the king, for example, José. No, all of us were here. Then, Michael, what does he think about the series, and whether you've inspired upon the adaptation of the Soldados de Salamina, similar to that. And there was another book by Cercas. No, not David, no, because I understood that the nature of those two books were completely different. Quite fortunately, Javier liked the film quite a lot. We sent him a link so that he could see what was going on, and I called him every morning. José Manuel Cercas had seen the episode, said not yet, because the link was broke down, he couldn't, and he took some time, and it was quite a bit of suspense, but he liked it very much, and I think he agrees with the adaptation. He'll be here this evening as well in the screening. What he said, more or less, it keeps the essence of the book, which I think is the best thing that an author can say about the adaptation of an author's book. Yes, Movistar Plus. Question about the characterization, which is your unrecognizable actors, Manuel, Álvaro, Eduard. How did you see each other? How did you feel in that process? What was it like? We haven't seen each other. We haven't seen each other yet on the screen. We haven't seen the series yet. We're here. We're in a blind spot, really, but the truth is, it's a bit fearful to use prosthetics. You run the risk of generating a mask that can get you too far away from the character that you're portraying. It is true. The characterization process helped us to get closer to the character, but the truth is, I think that it also leads you to try to do what's going to through the character inside, so that you can see, go beyond that false nose that you've got, because it's a very big nose and it's right in front of you. On the one hand, it helps you, and on the other hand, it forces you to try and to do a much more in-depth work. We've had a characterization team with Yolanda and Nacho who have been absolutely spectacular. The truth is, in the process, when we start up in the audition, we said, do we use a nose? Don't we use the nose? What do we do? Would it look false or not? Or will we be looking at a puppet? But no, we wagered in favor of using it, in my case, for example, on all the characterization that my colleagues wear. And at the end, I think we're very happy of the image that we're providing. And I personally imagine my colleagues the same. That process at the end helps you, in the end, to connect with that character that you've got to portray. I'm very happy the remark you've said, who just left. He's probably had things to do. We've all got things to do. But he didn't recognize it. But the truth is, I'm not wearing anything. My hair's back, and I wear glasses. And I put a couple of things in my mouth, inside my mouth, because I thought the mouth, Carrillo's mouth. He's got a mouth that's different to mine. He doesn't have any lips, and he's got a straight line. And it was trying to find that straight line. And it had a certain value. The thing was to try to get as close as possible to the spirit of Carrillo, his essence, and to not excessively going in through the indications of the director. I said, Eduard, if you speak as slow as Carrillo, your Carrillo's episode will last for 2 hours, so therefore we didn't have to speak as slowly as Mr. Santiago used to speak, but it was beautiful. It was great. It was quite curious and great work. So when they said to portray Santiago Carrillo, I said, wow, that's a big deal. But depends on who asks you. Alberto Rodríguez asked me, and the script was what it was, and you know that you're in good hands. And then you can jump in the deep end, but you know that you're going to be well taken care of with good taste and easier to do away. It was quite clear. It wasn't too clear for me that he could be Santiago Carrillo. Yes. Hi. Good afternoon. If you'll allow me a couple of questions. The first to Rafa. The research about the conversations between these characters, historical characters, is there anything in the archives? Susana and José Manuel. Secondly, what led you to take that book and give it to Alberto? Because I see a lot of subtleties and quite a lot of balance between the figure of the king and what we could call the two Spains, which is very subtle and it's very finely done. What was first, Rafa? Well, the novel was 4 years research. If I'm not mistaken, it's very well documented. Well, we wanted to do the work. Just the same, we went to that source because to make it our own, we had to drink from the same place. And that was many months, permanent research we were writing. We didn't stop researching, and there's a documentary that we've worked, which is by Pedro. But the research work was permanent, unapproachable, and never-ending. And as regards adaptation, well, I'd spent a long time to try to do something about the transition, because it was especially because I thought a very interesting period of Spain where the young kids don't know. I know it with my kids. No one even remember who Suarez was and what happened in Spain. So therefore, I addressed it. I spent 5 years, the truth is, working one line, trying to find a way of telling a story until I read Cerca's book. And when I read Cerca's book, after a heap of books like this, 20 books I said, well, this is what I wanted to do. The truth is, everything is here. Javier Cerca's book, quite fortunately at that time, well, I must thank Domingo Corral, above all Domingo, who got on my side. He understood what I want to do. He's not here, but he's here in my heart, and all of us that are here. sitting down, because without him, we wouldn't have been able, for a movie star would have been difficult to get involved in something as complicated as this. And Domingo suggested, why don't we go and meet Alberto? And I admired, because I'd seen all of Alberto's films, and I was very close to them when they presented La Peste. It was as if I won the lottery. And I said, well, this is a lottery. Do you think you'll want to make it? Well, let's send him the book. We sent him the book. He read it. And Alberto and Rafa as well, both of them together. And then Fran got on board. But Alberto read it and said, well, I liked it very much. And he was prepared to adapt it. And he gave me his point of view, how he sees it. We talked about the three traitors each episode, the trial, for example. But to convince me from the outset, it was his idea of treat the coup d'etat from the fourth episode in the trial in court. Then the casting, and we had all of these people. Eduard de Morte, for example. After 5 years of thinking that if I made this, I'd retire. I'm not going to retire, but I thought I would. Well, it was this. I won the lottery. Exactly the same thing. I think it is the most marvelous thing that's happened. Me, as a producer, to work next to him and next to Manolo, Álvaro, Eduard, great award of cinematography, the best speech I've ever heard. And when he's been given an award the other day, Susana was also, Christina's here. I want to thank all of the people in Movistar, Manuel, who's always been by my side, and Donna Mayor, the people from Sopa who's here, who made a beautiful billboard, Elio and the whole team who is taking care of us. So therefore, the lottery, they sent me to the moon, and I said, well, this is like going to the moon with Alberto and Rodríguez by his hand. So I feel very fortunate. Thank you. Please raise your hand when you have any question. Meanwhile, I would like to ask Alberto, albeit it's a project, the adaptation of this book, which comes to you. It is going back to a historical period that you've worked in already in another film. Is it important for you, for contemporary cinema, to not forget or continue to look at these historical periods, and also to do it through a platform, or whether it's a way for it to be more accessible for the audience? Yes, I think so. Both things that you've asked. I've got the feeling that the first responsibility that we have is to entertain, for the audience to have a good time. That's the first thing. And then it's great when they've got the opportunity of tell stories like this that quite probably within at a given period of time it will be forgotten in one way or another. But Cercas talks about a survey done in the UK. And he says, well, a survey was carried out, and 25% of those people interviewed thought that Winston Churchill was a fiction character. And I think, in one way or another, for the younger generations, probably happens here. Or at least we're one of the three traitors, or the three of them, I'm sure. So therefore, I don't think it's a bad idea. And the truth is, what I was in, I wanted Cerca's interpretation, how he creates fiction. I've got a friend that sustains that it's the best novels by Cercas, and it's an essay, but the construction and the characters and the ending, which is totally tragic, adding it all together, he composed an excellent novel and story, despite the fact whether it was the transition period or not in Spain, but the story per se. Before, I would like to thank Javier Cercas, who's here in San Sebastian, and he didn't come to the press conference because he didn't want to take it away, the spotlight on what the series, Alberto, and all of us who are sitting here today. From the outset, when I met him to adapt the series or adapt the books, the film, they said, I don't think it can be adapted. They said, don't worry, we'll find a way to adapt it. He thought, but the first conversations with him, I went to Lampurdà in Barcelona, and a lot of conversations with him when I said Alberto was on board. He gave a vote of confidence so large, he didn't get involved in anything. He said, I completely put my trust in you, And Alberto said we were worried about, in suspense, of what his opinion was. So when he sent us the message of the analysis that he'd done after seeing the series, okay, we took a great burden off our shoulders. It was a marvelous message from him, and we want to thank him for the way he behaved. Every time, on top of it, he liked it, so it's a real luxury. Another question. Hi. Good afternoon. Excuse me that I go back to the issue of the building of the characters with wearing the prostheses in the theater. There's the opportunity of rehearsals, of making mistaking until you find what the place of this character is and how you build your character. Now, especially, perhaps Edward, no, because I've seen him more in these characterization with a very powerful and daring construction. And Álvaro, I've also heard how you worked on your accent in your previous work. I'm sure Manolo as well. But my question is, in the Spanish audiovisual, in series and in film, do you have the space to be able to work on this? How do you manage it? Now, from what Eduard said, you've had this opportunity with Alberto. But in general, can you find a space to work in this sense? Thank you. Up until today, we have. From now on, we'll see. It depends on each project, but in any case, it's an issue of daring to do it. When I saw the Churchills, I said, cool, I'd love to be able to portray a Churchill like I've seen, but it's a pleasure. The truth is, it's basic to be well accompanied. If a new director would say to do this, I'd be glad to, and I'd love it. But I would say, a composition work like this, I'd say, well, let's talk about it very well, because I've got to trust you with Alberto. We finished the sequence and said, Eduard, a bit more Carrillo, a bit less Carrillo, this, that, and that way. That is to say, the work. In a work, well, in my case, in this work, I couldn't come everything built from home and dive in the deep end in the scene. No, it depended upon each dialogue, each scene, at that moment, each moment, where it was, because it was very dangerous to the actor and the character. It's a very fine line and very subtle, and I take advantage that I'm talking about. It's a pleasure and an honor to portray Santiago Carrillo, who I think is the great loser and forgotten person in this story, and he's someone who played a fundamental role for the story of democracy. And I think Felipe González blew all over him, and I think he deserves at least a chapter in an episode in this series, and he has it. You can applaud if you want to. In my case, I had the advantage that I'm less known. It wasn't his image and the way he spoke or moved appeared too much in the media, like the characters that my colleagues portrayed. He was a bit more relaxed in that sense. That is, I believed I needed to imitate or to talk like him. What I did need is to leave me as a person, leave me, and this has helped me very much to characterize. And obviously the costume design by Eduardo Garcia, Nacho Garcia's work, and Yolanda has been, because on the one hand, you go to the rehearsals trying to get as close as possible to the energy of the age of that character, plus how he spoke. I've seen interviews, and I tried to. I don't want to be pragmatic through the entire episode. The energy I put in this is going to take away energy from other things. I think it's not that important. Let's focus. Get his energy, the energy of his age. He insisted, Alberto said, insisted about his age and the fact that he dedicates to the military career. He places his body in a position, different position. So therefore, to put together what we saw in the rehearsals, and then when we shot, the first impact was shooting in the Congress building, which was an enormous impact for all of us, I think. This meant, and from there we built our characters on the day-to-day. Well, in my case, I got called by Lida and Alberto, who are the directors of casting directors, said that I have to be Adolfo Suárez, and I think I thought they're crazy. They've gone mad. I didn't believe I could portray this role. They said Alberto's behind now. I'm going to be on the screen like Eduard Fernández and Solo, and people like Miquel Spade, Llorente, Oscar de la Fuente, and David Lorente, who are incredible. And how am I not going to say no? Am I going to say no to this? And I started in this project with a lot of vertigo, a lot of fear, because it's a great responsibility, because it could be a poisonous lolly. And I did a lot of work visioning and watching how Suárez was. We played with the characterization that we're talking about, but the only thing I have is a false nose that I had to look at how his gestures were, how he uses his looks, and so on and so forth. So something happens, and that is that Suárez is a guy that disappears from the public life for many years now, and I think it generates a legend sort of effect in which everyone remembers a different type of Suárez, precisely because of all that time that's gone by. So, how can I keep every one of those spectators happy who can see a bit of that Suárez and can be loyal to the memory of everyone's memory, and at the end you connect with this? And as Eduard said, I'm not trying to do a pure imitation of the character, because I think that would have been, we would have fell into the mistake of doing something of a bit of a farce. And we were saying that we're interested above all to generate the energy or the spirit or the character of someone who had the capacity of doing what Adolfo Suárez did. And it's a mixture, as we said in the interviews this morning, between the character that you have to represent, your figure as an actor, and how you can try to link that all together so that at the end of the day there are moments when we think, for example, or some of us think, Suárez's speech when he resigned. So we have to replicate all of the gestures when he touches his lips. He wets his lips to keep walking, but you have to be very precise, because we were saying this morning, Alberto is a director who's very meticulous, so therefore you are in a situation of forcing yourself to be even more meticulous than what you normally are. But on the other hand, there's a Suárez who's in front of the camera, who's in the discourse, who's doing interviews on TV, and it's an image which is very public. What we were interested very much is to see how the Suárez who's in the office, who has a conversation with a friend, a conversation with someone he wants to understand, come to an understanding. So that human side of the character is what we've had to generate ourselves. I think Cerca's book, you can guess more or less that sort of nature of the character, but we were very interested beyond the figure, that whatever he did politically, what the man was like that managed to do all of this. That's where I tried to to work. That's and everything we said, sometimes it works, and sometimes doing it well, it doesn't work, but it seems it worked this time. We haven't seen it, so we feel very happy. We haven't seen it yet. We'll see this evening. I'd like to ask the director whether you believe, well, we know everything about February the 23rd, the essential part we do, but there's material that has to be declassified. I'm under the impression from what you said, what you're interested in the story that Cercas talks about, the history, the story of the three traitors more than what really happened or the historical reality and so forth. No. I mean, what I'm interested from the outside was the story. Obviously, the story in capital. I'm very interested in the story per se, otherwise it wouldn't make any sense having made this film or this series. That's what drew me and led me from the outset. And the other question is, I'm not too sure whether you've asked it or I didn't understand. Yes. Do you believe that the 23rd of February everyone knows there's material, or there's declassified material which may allow it to be interpreted another way? I'm not too sure, but I know there are recordings. Cerca says recordings, a lot of the recordings or part of the recordings were lost that night with people calling from inside the Congress. Building that's been lost. Sorry, but we've lost it. Where are the keys? I imagine there are things that we don't know and we'll finally find out. If the question is whether this country is prepared, I think it is. I think it's prepared. We have a sufficiently solid democracy. Javier was telling Alberto and I when we were on the beach before we came in. He said when he published the book, it was a book theoretically anti-system. Everyone was against the book, half the country, even the newspaper. Pablo Iglesias always defended it. Someone who defended this, 19 years have gone by, almost 20. He says he hasn't changed a single comma of the book, and now it's considered by the system that those that criticized it in the past now praise it. It's quite curious about an essay, such an in-depth essay. Time changes people, but the book is still the same. A final question. Does anyone have a question? Hi. Thank you very much. Congratulations. I would like from production to know what were the challenges that you confronted. Undoubtedly, characterization is great, but I imagine to deal with an issue like this involves other types of challenges. I would like to tell you that perhaps that question, technically, more specifically, Lorenzo can talk about, but for movie star, we believed it was the ideal. With José Manuel, we've been trying to tell a story about the transition, a story that could tell how important that moment was. And we have our French partners who are the best colleagues to go on this journey. We talked to them over lunch, something that we shared from the outset, and that is to say that the feeling that this series arrived at the right time, a very suitable time, with the importance of understanding, because one realizes, well, it talks about freedom and democracy, the importance of having it and how difficult it is to achieve it and to maintain that. And having said that, it is true that for the movie star, once the cast is organized, everything goes easy. The difficult thing was to find the story, the producer, and we can't be happy to be working with the producer again. Alberto accepted, and with Alberto and with José Manuel, we were able to drag along all the other casts, particularly, I think, you can tell the story better than me. No. Well, we had a lot of difficulties. The biggest difficulty that we had, which is when we made the first production plan or schedule, the objective of coming here and making it to San Sebastian. So therefore, I remember I called Alberto, listen, I know you've got a production schedule and directing, and he called me inhuman. I said, it's impossible to achieve. And he said, yes, you're right. But I think we're going to manage to achieve it, and we did. And here we are. That was a challenge, which was a difficult challenge. Another one was just to shoot in the Congress building, because the Congress building now is not similar to the one, and to do the attrezzo, change all the sofas, to change the dogmatics. That's it. In 3 days, because the Congress, we managed to achieve it. I can't explain how, but it was very difficult to achieve. But we managed it we had to shoot all of those scenes in 3 days. So therefore, we had 3 units at the same time working inside, outside, some people on the palace building. And then it looked like a theme park outside the Congress building. But to shoot in La Moncloa as well, we were able to shoot in La Moncloa. But, and as I say, to meet the deadlines we'd foreseen was very demanding work for the director, a lot of work, and it unpayable. And I finished with this. And also, before the production, the challenge was to write it. Rafa and Fran with Alberto, and I helped as much as I could, but they did marvelous adaptation. Another difficult challenge, how to adapt that book, how to cut off, to turn it into episode, to address the trial case, the court case, for example, the trial. When the trial, we had to build the court, and so with a lot of challenges, we did this. Movie star trust us, and we were very lucky that Arte, who are here, who are the co-producers, entered from the outset. They came to lunch in Madrid, and we were very pleased that Arte came along because we thought they contributed the class that this project needed. And thank you very much for your notes that you sent up and for having supported us. A lot of challenges, but we overcome them. That's from the production standpoint, but I imagine the director would have to overcome others and the actors themselves. Well, I was just as I entered the project just as afraid. I might look very sure of myself, but normally all of the process goes inside. I don't want to show them how nervous I am. The most complex, undoubtedly, was the shooting in the Congress building. And then, apart from this fantastic screenplay that was written by these two gentlemen, or these two people, I mean, I participated in the plot. The key was to have a team that worked all together and to forge ahead, not only the artistic, but not only the artistic cast, but also the crew. Everything went very well. There wasn't a bad day during the shooting of the film. Even the famous, when we had that blackout, we shot practically all day. So we didn't miss a day or a second to be able to bring this series here to San Sebastian. And on the other hand, I think we had a great time. We've had a lot of fun. Good and bad. But anyway, but I think we've had a lot of fun, and I think the wind was in our favor. We wanted for this to work out well, which is always something great to be grateful for. We have to finish the press conference here. A big applause for everyone in the film Anatomía de un instante, the anatomy of a moment. Thank you.